So now talking about Mass Effect 3, because there was a Yahg in Mass Effect 3 on Surkesh, the Solarian homeworld. It was a Yahg that had been captured for experimentation. And I believe they had more than just one Yahg, but I think we only saw one. I don't remember exactly, but I remember one got loose. The Solarians were actually trying to secretly uplift the Yahg in a similar manner that they did the Krogan. Because if you remember about the Krogan, during the Rachni Wars, the Council needed help to destroy the Rachni, and the only thing that really could help them out were the Krogans. So the Solarians went to the Krogan homeworld and told the Krogan, hey, you guys, we need your help. If you help us, we could give you this planet that's not radiation filled, and you could go there and have a lot of fun, and you could have babies and not die. So the Krogan were like, hey, yeah, let's do it. So the Solarians were actually trying to do something like that with the Yahg. They were trying to do some kind of uplifting of the Yahg and use them for their own initiatives, the Solarians' initiatives. So very similar to what they did with the Krogan. But then Cerberus attacks, and one of the Yahgs escapes and kills a bunch of Cerberus soldiers and goes on a freaking killing rampage. So yeah, and then in Mass Effect 3 was when Admiral Hackett mentions that the Reapers pretty much left the Yahg homeworld alone, and it's pretty much because of what I was just talking about earlier, that the Reapers didn't go after them because they weren't spacefaring. So that's it for the Yahg. Let me move on to the Vorcha. The Vorcha and the Yahg, I guess the similarities when it comes to both of them is that they're really, really aggressive. They're a very hostile race, but the Yahg is much more civilized than the Vorcha. The Vorcha is pretty much considered as vermin. They're not really civilized. They do have a culture and that stuff, but they're not. They are considered to be primitive, and they're primitive pretty much because they have very, very limited resources on their home world, so they haven't been able to advance as much as they could have. But also, they're always they even have a way to communicate that's pretty much just fighting. So being aggressive is part of their culture, because like I said, they communicate sometimes like that. I think the thing that I was like, wow, I didn't know that about the Vorcha, is their biology. They're known for their unique biology. Every race has something unique about them that's really interesting, but the Vorcha, they are the race that has the shortest lifespan out of all the races. Their average lifespan is up to like 20 years old. So at 20 is already freaking pushing it for a Vorcha. The thing that they have that no other race has is their adaptability. Their biology makes them adapt to any environment that they go in. So that's why they could pretty much live in any place. They usually, when they're off-world, whenever they're not on their home world, they usually take over the darkest spots where nobody goes to, like an Omega, the slums, because they don't like to mix with other races. And they don't like to be alone either, so they stick with their own race. The Vorcha are more about being in groups than they are about being alone or among other races. So that's why they usually go in the darkest corners of whatever world that they're in. And they could adapt to whatever environment that they're in. But usually they can only adapt to one environment since they are so short-lived. The way that they adapt does take time. So they could pretty much only change their adaptation to one environment throughout their lifespan. They're compared to this type of worm called the planarian worm. I don't like worms. But this is a real worm that exists, in real life. And I was reading about it, and the freaking worm, I don't know if you guys have heard about it, but this worm has this ability to regenerate body parts. So if you cut a body part from it, a worm doesn't really have body parts, but they were saying that if you cut it in half, if you cut this worm in half, it could actually regenerate into another individual. So if you cut this, oh, that's so gross. If you cut this worm in half, you could make 2 worms. So it could regenerate another freaking head, and that's just gross. That's what the Vorcha does. I don't think you could cut a Vorcha in half and then another Vorcha would like grow from it, but it could regenerate limbs. So if you cut a part of a Vorcha off, it will regenerate another limb. I believe it's said in a period of months. So they have this unique form of regeneration. If you shoot them or hurt them, they heal a lot faster. So the way that the Vorcha is able to do this, the regeneration, is because of the cells. It has a cluster of non-differentiated cells, which means that these cells could, wherever it's needed, the cells could just go over there and just form whatever. I'm thinking that this is kind of like stem cells, where they're not really, these cells aren't particular to a specific job or something, you know, like liver cells and skin cells. These are already skin cells and they're already liver cells. So the Vorcha, I think, have like these undifferentiated cells in them where they're just like chilling, waiting to see where they're needed. So if an arm is cut off, these cells could just go over there and regenerate and become the cells for that piece. And this whole adaptability to an environment thing, for example, they could create, their skin could develop to be stronger if they're in a place where they could get burned. Also, their musculature could increase in places that have high gravity. They could regenerate another limb in about a week. That'd be cool. And another example is also if you put a Vorcha in a planet or in an atmosphere where they can't really breathe easily, their lungs will adapt to the gases that are in that planet so that they could live there. But because of this whole adapting thing that they have, the Vorcha no longer, or has pretty much never evolved physically. They've looked the same way for years, for millions of years. They've never evolved because they have no reason to. You know, species evolve to adapt to specific environment changes and stuff like that. So since the Vorcha constantly adapts, constantly is evolving, they don't go through this whole drastic evolution changes throughout years. You know, they look the same. They look the same as they've always looked for millions of years, because they pretty much are evolving differently according to wherever they live, at least once in their lifespan. So the Vorcha, like I was saying, in their planet, they have very limited resources. They come from a small, hostile, overcrowded planet, and the resources have been stripped from previous races that were there. So their planet is pretty much, there's pretty much nothing there anymore. So the Vorcha are constantly trying to survive, just constantly fighting. So the lack of resources has resulted in a tight-knit, clan-based society in which rival clans wage constant war against each other for the, you know, fighting against each other for resources. So this whole constant war against clans have made the Vorcha stronger and more aggressive as the generations go by. But they because of the lack of resources, this has kept them as a very primitive race. They also have found the Vorcha, when they were in Omega, some of them allied themselves with the Collectors because they were so desperate. They pretty much would do anything to get some resources, and that's exactly what the Collectors would do. If you were to take them the specimens that they were asking for, the Collectors would give whoever had helped them technology or resources or something like that. So that's why you usually see Vorcha that are working for the collectors. So this is what I was talking about. The Vorcha use combat, both singly and in groups, as their default form of communication. So this has led to them to having almost like a non-verbal communication. So it's almost like, you know, if I slap you, that means that you can't come over here. So if someone's just walking and whoosh, okay, I gotta go back. That's why I was like, wow, that's a pretty interesting language there. That's why when you see Vorcha, like on Omega, they don't really talk well. They learned the language because they were taught it usually by the Blood Pack, because at least the ones on Omega, the Blood Pack, they use a lot of Vorcha because of their aggression and because of how their adaptability and all that. So the Blood Pack will teach them how to talk, so that's why they talk all weird, because they pretty much learned the language and it's not theirs, because they don't really talk. They like to live in clans that aren't huge and aren't very small, so like an average sized clan. But whenever the clan is starting to get big, the younger members of the clan will separate and create another clan. So the Vorcha aren't spacefaring, but the way that they have left their homeworld is actually by hiding in spaceships of people that have actually gone to the Vorcha homeland for who knows why. But people that have gone there, Vorcha have escaped their homeworld or left their homeworld by hiding in these ships. So the Blood Pack actually trained the Vorcha to be faster, stronger, smarter. Not very smart. They don't get very smart, but they could at least communicate now verbally. But yeah, that's why you see the Blood Pack usually using Vorcha, because they could get them very easily, and they could train them easily, and they're very aggressive, you know, by nature. And one thing that I thought was pretty funny was what Morden said. I don't remember where he mentioned it, but he said that the offspring of an Asari and a Vorcha, which is just kind of disturbing to imagine, but I feel really bad for the Asari. And the offspring of the Asari and the Vorcha is allergic to dairy products. That's such a Morden Solis fact right there. Like that epitomizes Morden Solis. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's the Vorcha. That's all I have on the Vorcha. So again, these two species were left alone by the Reapers because they were not spacefaring at the moment, or at the moment of Mass Effect 3. So it just kind of shows the way that the Reapers go about, you know, kind of destroying spacefaring creatures and leaving the galaxy to those that haven't mastered spaceflight, letting them evolve. Of course, the Vorcha probably will never evolve. They're probably always going to be left behind. They're probably the best, the safest, the safest race in the galaxy, because I don't think they're ever going to be targeted by the Reapers. I found this really interesting. Hopefully you guys did too. Mass Effect Talks is no longer going to be every Friday, but it's going to be maybe twice a month. Because I'm a little bit shorter on time now. Next Mass Effect Talks is most likely going to be on the Volus and the Elcor. I believe they are my last ones, and then I most likely will do one on the ancient races. So thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you guys later.